little bit late today, but that's what happens with live broadcasts. So today we're going to dedicate the whole of this program to COVID and particularly vaccinations. So we've got great news in terms of our country is way ahead of most of the world in that we've vaccinated more of the population than most of the countries. So we reached a landmark 10 million vaccinations at the weekend, and they're going ahead at probably at the rate of 350, 400,000 people are being vaccinated on a daily basis. And our vaccination stations are increasing. So, it's something that we should be proud of in terms of what our country's achieved. But there's a problem here. And that problem is that according to studies published recently, that the Indian community is very reluctant to have vaccinations. So whereas white people, for want of a better word, are 80% of them are saying that they would take the vaccine if they were offered it, only 57% of British Indians said that they would. So there's some myths around that. And people talking about animal fats, etc., within those, and especially for the Gursikh community, and also dangers of fertility at some point. So, in order for us to discuss these today, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Kamal Azad, who will be exploding some of those myths for us, hopefully, and clarifying some of the matters in terms of, whether we should have the vaccine or not. My thoughts are that, at the end of the day, there are risks to everything that we do. But the bigger risk at the moment is the fact that we're approaching 110,000 deaths in this country. And although those figures are slowing down, they're by no means over. So we don't know how many more fatalities we're going to have. And so, especially for the elderly, we need to explode some of these myths, that we can actually make a decision as to whether we have this vaccine. One of the other reasons that I've also been told is there are people, especially in our community, that think that they don't deserve it somehow, that other people should take the vaccine instead. Look, there's plenty of vaccine being produced, and in 2 or 3 months we'll have a glut of them, and there'll be too much. So, that's another thing that's stopping people from taking advantage of what's on offer. We can have absolute pride in the National Health Service. The fact that we don't actually have to pay for any of these jabs is another bonus that the cost of them doesn't stop anybody. The other thing is that if you want to travel, it will become necessary that you will have to be vaccinated in order to board a flight or enter the country of your destination. So there could be a serious restriction that carries on if you choose not to have the vaccine. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest, Dr. Kamal Azad. Welcome, Kamal.
Hello, hi, thanks for having me on, Cam.
You're welcome. So we were discussing earlier today, there's a part of the population that doesn't want to have the vaccine for various reasons. So just wanted to discuss with you the elements of how safe it is, and if there are any risks, what risks there are. And then with particular, I know amongst the Indian community and the Pakistani Muslim community, there's been concerns about things like animal products being in the vaccine. So from a religious point of view, should they be having that? So what are your thoughts?
I mean, there's a lot of, touching on a lot of issues. I mean, we have seen that in certain ethnic groups, there is a higher reluctance, if you like, for the vaccine. Not fully sure what that is. Obviously, you've touched on a couple of those issues. I mean, even among a Caucasian population, there is still some reluctance because not absolutely everybody, wants it. Some people want it and can't have it yet equally. In terms of the safety, obviously the vaccine has rolled out quicker than a regular vaccine, for other diseases that we've seen, because a lot of effort that has gone into COVID has either forced greater innovation or has cut through some of the red tape that slows things down, or there's just been more resource and priority thrown at it. So that becomes obviously the main global priority, and various people are working on solutions in all aspects of it, whether that is better technologies for respirators, vaccinations, PPE, and so on. So things have moved quicker, but it is still using technology that is already known about. It's a newer technology. It's a so-called mRNA virus. So a classical vaccine would have taken a part of the virus and deactivated it, and then you are exposed to it, and then your body produces an immune response based on that. Whereas there's something called a spike protein. I won't go into too much heavy science, but essentially this will stimulate your body's immunity within this. So it's a new technology, or relatively new, shall we say, but it has been worked on before. People have looked at it for Ebola and Zika virus as well. So it's still building on existing technology. And obviously, this time last year, we were only just getting to grips with the fact that there was this new virus and the seriousness of it in the West. So
sure. So if I can just stop you for 1 second. So the virus, the vaccine isn't completely new. It's technology that we've looked at before.
Yes, it's based on technology that has been used or researched or studied in the past. Now, so it's building on previous data and previous knowledge, but obviously we didn't have coronavirus as an issue 18 months ago. So the virus itself, the vaccine itself, is of course new because the virus is a new problem, but it's extrapolating on existing knowledge.
Okay, I can't imagine that. I know it's obviously the government placed great priority, and I was reading today that one of the things that our government is to be congratulated on is the fact that they immediately started looking for this vaccine when we became aware of corona, and that's probably why we're a little bit ahead of the world. So, in terms of our viewers, I don't think there's any corners being cut, has there? That it's not been rushed through with sort of any regulatory requirements not being met, have there?
No, it still has to meet all the safety targets that any kind of vaccination has to adhere to. It's just obviously on a quicker timescale, perhaps, but it still has to hit the same standards of safety and the same targets. Because you've got to bear in mind, it didn't come out straight away. It's been, it's only just come out in terms of use for the general public a couple of months ago, give or take. So I appreciate it's been trials prior to that, and there's been a lot of work going on in various centres around the world, including Oxford, where I'm based, although I'm not part of that work directly myself, so I can't take any credit for it. But essentially, it's still got to hold up to the same standards. But anybody who's doing any kind of work in developing technology or products in relation to COVID, things are moving at a faster pace and being given a priority, especially in terms of regulatory workload. So it's more about cutting down on the red tape and not cutting corners on safety.
So it's not been rushed through. So we don't need to fear the fact that some elements of safety or testing would not have been taken through. I suppose what's happened is the normal route of regulatory requirements have been speeded up for this, so that we can get it market quicker. And then the other thing is, I suppose that once we became aware that coronavirus existed, very, very early doors, probably even before it hit this country, scientists would have already started working on that vaccine, wouldn't they?
I would think so. Well, they certainly would have been thinking about it. Again, I'm not familiar with what work could have gone on in China, for example, because they had a head start on the rest of the world. But equally, everybody has been working on various aspects, whatever our, particular skill sets are within healthcare, because it's impacted us all, at every level. Whatever your subspecialty is, whatever you're treating, it's affected you in some way as a health professional. So we're all coming at it with our own angle, with our own ideas, and there's been a greater spirit of innovation fostered. But again, there's certainly no corners cut. I can see. So yeah, it's just of necessity spearheading this.
Okay. So we're okay with that. So the next part is obviously is it's a new type of medicine. So the
Mhm.
thing that we don't know is long-term side effects at this moment in time. But obviously that's the same with any new treatment that comes out that we find that until the only way to find out what happens over the long term is obviously wait till the long term, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we don't know what the effects are going to be like in
Mm.
5 years, 10 years, if there are going to be any. In fact, obviously, we can extrapolate a lot from what is known about vaccinations, because vaccinations have been going on for a long time, and again, the mRNA vaccines have been looked at as well. So, it's not complete, it's not completely unknown, but in relation to the specific vaccine, yeah, we don't have long-term data yet, because we physically can't. We've only had the virus for a year and a half or so, but equally we can't afford to wait either,
Of course.
because we
So
do
it's
know
like
what's
any
happening.
medicine. So it's like any new treatment that comes out for anything, not just for this virus, but it could be for cancer, it could be heart disease. So pioneering treatments that come out do carry an element of risk because we don't know what's going to happen over time. But it's certainly not unique in the treatment that we're being offered right now. I'm sure that you would be offering all sorts of treatments that are very new in your general practice work, as would any other doctor or hospital, wouldn't they?
I think within, yes, within reason. Obviously, it takes a
Mm,
long time for new treatments to actually get established and accepted, and so by the time things become new, it's already been through a lot of, it's been many years. So often we have longer term data, just talking very, very generic sense. But equally, there are some treatments whereby if you're looking at cancer and you say, well, look, this is what's going to happen with the current treatment, we can offer you a new treatment, often within the setting of a clinical trial. And that's the caveat of that, because it's always learning and you're comparing, the new treatment with a previous treatment or the current accepted treatment to see if it's any better. So one could, one would say that, look, that's your option. If we don't do anything, that's potentially your option. If you do anything, it might not make it better, but that's your situation if we don't do anything. So, not great choices to have,
yes.
unfortunately, but this is the situation we're in, because, we can see that the rates are going higher. They're higher than they were during the peak of the first lockdown. The intensive care admissions are higher, almost double, around double, if not more than double, compared to what they were at the peak of the first lockdown. And the hospitals are full at the moment, and it's over and above what would be a normal winter bed crisis. Because even in a winter bed crisis, a lot of normal services would continue, whereas a lot of normal services are completely scaled back. Just that we are literally on stuff that needs to be treated urgently that isn't related to coronavirus. So, a lot of elective procedures are cancelled and scaled back way more than would happen during a normal winter bed crisis. So, the situation is very bleak at the moment.
Yeah, you were saying earlier to me that the hospitals are virtually at bursting point around the country, aren't they?
Mm. Yeah, yes,
Yeah, is that
absolutely.
is that
Yeah,
the case? Yeah, and much
yeah,
more so
this
because
is one of the, yeah.
yeah,
Yes,
because
as I said, I mean, go on, Cam, sorry.
yeah, it's okay, don't worry. So obviously, there is usually more of a stress on the health service during the winter months, but
Mhm.
again, people compare corona to flu-like symptoms, but this is nothing like flu in terms of the numbers that are in hospital right now. Is that right?
Oh yes, people. Yes, this is over and above that. And as you know, some people will be positive, and they'll be surprised if they're positive. Some people are symptomatic. Some people will have mild flu-like symptoms. Some people will be extremely ill. Some people will die, and there's a whole spectrum in between. So just because somebody might go and say, "Well, I'm okay," it's like, that's great, good that you're okay. Please don't give it to somebody who's immunocompromised, such as a
That's right.
diabetic, or has cancer, or leukemia, or is elderly, or So even if you're okay, that's great. Please don't spread it around.
Yeah, we had a case of a family that we know. All of them came down with corona.
Oh
Luckily,
gosh.
nobody was hospitalized, and one of them was asymptomatic. And as you said, some people catch it and escape relatively lightly, but other people obviously have a fate that nobody wants right now. Hence the over 100,000 deaths in that country.
Indeed,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so now let's come down to our own communities. It's been widely publicized that the BAME community is suffering more so than others. What do you think the reasons are for that?
It's not fully known. There's obviously many theories about this, and whether there is something that I don't know is the short answer. A lot of work is still going into this. I don't think it's um, a definite conclusion that we can draw yet. People have obviously postulated a lot of different things, whether that is down to sort of social circumstances, whether that is down to a higher rates of diabetes or whatever. There's just lots of different theories. I think there's definitely been, well, there has been an association. Quite what the root is behind it, I'm unfortunately I can't give you an answer. I would be absolutely happy to sort of say yes, that's what it's about. But we do see that it's there. Which, again, when you sort of tie that in with the reluctance to take up a vaccine, for example, is these two things are at odds with each other. In my opinion, but obviously I can't tell one person what to do. But at the same time, I can say that I think that if we get vaccinated, then that should reduce the spread of the virus. Because just to get to some very basics without wishing to patronise anybody, a virus you can't treat with antibiotics. The only thing you can do with the virus is your body will fight it off. It's yourself, or you get vaccinated, and then you can't spread it around, and then that stops it going around. So that's what we have. Viruses are very difficult to kill. That's why I think anybody who's had a cold sore, it's there. That's right. There for life. It's a unique virus. There isn't really, obviously you can use the creams for symptomatic relief, but you can't. It'll still come back again one day. So you'll never get rid of it. It's always there, and it's hard to eradicate. So if there is a way of doing that, then that will be the strategy.
Okay, so we don't know the single reason why the BAME community is suffering more so. Like you said, it could be the fact that we're more prone to diabetes and certain other diseases, or it could be the way, simply our lifestyles, the way we live. Because people have said that we're more likely to live in larger households, extended families. We certainly socialize a lot more. So it could be any number of factors that are leading to the fact that we are more at risk. But that's a fact, isn't it? That our communities are suffering more from this disease than most others, right?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I mean, I just cited diabetes as an example, as a disease that can suppress immunity and has a higher rate in some populations compared to, say, a Caucasian population. But I'm not saying that diabetes is the actual reason. I was just giving an example of a health difference among subtypes. But there may be other people who have done a bit more research and maybe closer to an answer. I just don't personally have that. I don't want to make anything up. But the fact is, it's there. For whatever reason, it's there. And it may be one thing. It might be, A plus B gives you that. I don't know. Hopefully we'll come to an answer soon.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Because the Americans have talked about their problem with obesity and those individuals, so being more prone to contract corona. I think that it comes down to your immune system, doesn't it? So for whatever reason, if your immune system isn't where it needs to be, or it is the best possible state, then obviously not just corona, you're prone to get any disease, aren't you?
Well, yeah, anything that knocks your immunity will. It doesn't help if you get sick. It doesn't help if you need to heal a wound. It causes a problem, and obesity causes health problems of its own right, and that's a whole other thing. We can spend hours on, and but again, the obesity and what's going behind the obesity is another factor. But again, people have compared different populations and found some things better in other countries than others. So we still don't have a good explanation of everything, because it's not just obese people that are getting really sick with this. That's the thing. If it was just older people, or older people who are very overweight, or who are also got a serious illness that affects their immunity, then that would be quite a simple conclusion. But it isn't necessarily, and that's the puzzling thing about it. So there's just going to be many factors, whether we'll hit on it one day, or what if there's an unlucky combination of environmental factors and lifestyle factors and genetics, just all make you more susceptible. I don't know. But we're still learning. So there's a lot of work published, but equally there's still a lot more work to do because people are trying to get whatever knowledge they have out there quickly. But with the caveat that it's very early days and we don't know all the answers, but this is what we've seen so far. Everything I'm telling you today, next month, it could be out of date, it could be disproved, because, the knowledge is evolving, rapidly as we're getting more experience and exposure and research.
Yeah, it's a moving feast, isn't it? And every day new information is coming out. We're learning more and more about this, and that will continue. But that's the world that we live in today. So let's have a look at some of the myths that surround corona. So two of the biggest ones that affect our communities is that it contains animal products. I don't know, does it, or do you know whether it does or not?
Well, I think what's actually in it is going to be proprietary, but most vaccines will contain some kind of animal product of some kind, whether that is, an egg albumin or something. So certain and vaccines couldn't be given if you were allergic to eggs, for example, in the past. Most products have been, at least tested on animals, or used, and animal models have been used. I must admit, the source of RNA I don't want to quote which animal it's from because I'm not sure, but there may be concerns about that. But at the same time, we do give animal products a lot of the time, and in some work I've done when I worked on burns, there's some skin substitutes that are basically porcine derived or use collagen from a pig skin, and obviously if that is against somebody's religion, we obviously have to be honest, we'll always tell people if we think that is going to be the best treatment for that burn, for example, that it's derived from pig, is that okay? And people, most of the time, people actually accept it. It's for the health of their child. I'm not saying that's what they should or shouldn't do, because everybody's got to make that decision for themselves if that's what they feel comfortable with. But just have to be open about that. But I've found, just from my own clinical experience, that people tend to accept it, or heart valves that are again, can from pig again, can be still accepted by a lot of people, even if it's eating the pork is against their religion. Just as an example.
That's an interesting point that you made there, that sometimes religion doesn't allow these things and we make these decisions. But I wonder if we'd make the same decision for our child. And that's you touched on that point. So we may make these decisions for ourselves, but for a loved one, I'm sure we'd say, you know what, forget about that. Let's treat the child and see if we can get better. But as you said, it's a very personal choice, and respect for everybody. I suppose the thing is that if you have concerns, is to seek medical advice and have a conversation with your GP and make an informed decision, right?
Yes, or if you are, because obviously the vaccinations are being sort of stratified in terms of risk. So as you're being offered them, as part of the consent process, because you don't just go to the vaccination centre and they sort of stab you straight away. They've got to body check you are who you say you are, make sure you've got the right person, check any allergies, any contraindications, any current illnesses, and so on. And so part of that process, and they can just advise you, because there are several different brands, if you like, on the market. So where they have been derived from, it's worth checking. If there's any concerns there, but as far as I'm aware, I don't believe that it's derived from an animal that would have a problem with religion, but I can't speak for every single vaccination on the market. So that's why I'm being a little bit guarded in that.
Okay, so just to clarify, what your advice is to go, if you get called or you get an appointment given to you, go to the centre and talk to the clinician that you meet there and have a conversation and decide at that moment whether you're going to go forward or not.
Well, I think any concerns you have now, they may have a telephone number when you get the letter. Obviously, as a healthcare worker, it's a little bit different. I won't be contacted in the same way that the general public is contacted because, as a
Sure.
frontline worker, it's a bit different. So I can't speak to how the appointments are given, but I suspect there should be some way of contacting on there. And if there isn't, then you can go there and any questions you have, just write them down because you might forget in the moment. So write it down ahead of time. And then if you've got any questions or concerns, just ask. And again, I mean, the internet is obviously a good source of information, but a lot of it is unfiltered and unchecked. So, you can sort of look things up, but with caution.
Yes, with caution being the key words there. Okay, so one of the other things that's come out is that, does it affect fertility in men and women? So is there any evidence or is there is there a myth that we can explode right now that it does or it doesn't?
Yeah, again, with the caveat that we don't have the long-term data, but I don't believe it affects long-term fertility as far as we can tell. So far, there's been no evidence to suggest that it does at the moment. And obviously, like a lot of things, if you're, considering getting pregnant or trying to conceive, for both the man and the woman, there are obviously many things that you need to do to optimize your fertility in terms of, how you're living, in terms of, smoking, alcohol consumption, and then other things people talk about, that's, amount of coffee drinking, eating as natural as possible, putting your mobile phone in your pocket, and there's plenty of things that affect fertility as well. So I think it would be wrong to just blame it on a vaccine. But I think so far there's nothing to suggest that it affects fertility. Obviously, there has been sort of concerns about whether pregnant women should be given the vaccination, and at the moment, I think it's still that if you're actually pregnant, then you may not get they may advise to withhold the vaccine because, again, the effects on the fetus are not fully known, unless that advice has sort of changed very recently. I believe that's still the case. Or if you get your first dose and then you become pregnant after the first dose, they may withhold the second dose until after you have delivered. But again, the advice on that is evolving as well. So, at the time, see what the advice actually is at that time, because again, that may change next week, because it's
But that's
constantly
quite a
evolving.
common thing, isn't it? There are some medicines that are not administered to pregnant women, so that's not unusual to find that could be the advice that, like you said, until you've conceived, not to have the vaccine until then.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, anything. If you,
Mm.
if you want to get Lemsip, if your pregnant wife is having a bit of a flu or a cold, it's normal. It's just a normal sore cold for the moment. Anything. Well, should we get Lemsip? And you read the packet, and they sort of don't tell you whether it is or isn't safe. They just say consult your doctor and take the balance of risks. And just because it's not because it is safe or isn't safe, it's just nobody's actually decided to test it on a load of pregnant women or pregnant animals. So they can't say for definite whether it is or isn't. And so then you look down at the breakdown ingredients and think, well, paracetamol's okay. Is that stuff okay? Is that okay? Do I really need it? Maybe I'll just take paracetamol. Just taking the example of Lemsip, which is a fairly uncontroversial medication as far as I can tell. But equally, nobody says that's absolutely cast iron guaranteed safe in pregnancy. They just sort of say, consult your doctor. So with something
Yes.
simple that's been around for so long, you can't, or with other medications, you'll see something like that on the packet. So even with that, people are kind of a bit guarded about their advice. So, with something like a relatively new vaccine, of course, they're going to be cautious with their advice, and rightly so.
So I guess what we're saying is there's an element of risk in taking any medicine, including Lemsip, right?
And there's a little booklet. It's quite well, it's electronic now. Although I think paperback versions come. That when I first qualified 20 odd years ago, we were all given the BNF, the British National Formulae. So that's a little book, a little book about the size of a Harry Potter book, full of all the medications that we can prescribe. And there's a list of cautions, side effects, contraindications, interactions with other drugs. And so if you actually list a list of potential side effects with any medication is potentially huge. And some of them are quite serious, but obviously most of the time it doesn't happen. But if somebody's got a rare immune reaction to just an antibiotic, it's got to go in the book. They get a yellow card sent to the manufacturer and it goes and gets listed. So, every medication, has potential side effects of interaction, and there's a long list, and some of them are terrifying. But most of the time, you give it, and most of the time it's okay. Obviously, certain medications we know are more prone to a serious side effect than others, and then there's abused more cautiously, whereas others, are generally considered a safer, innocuous, or less potent medication in terms of side effects, and might be given more freely. But the potential for harm with anything is there.
Yes, yes. So proceed with caution, get informed, learn as much as you can, and take advice from the internet, take advice from medical professions, and make up your mind, right? So maybe not. Go on. Sorry, you were going to say something?
No. I was just.
Okay. So then, of course, we've got the conspiracy theorists, haven't we? Not medical related, but it'd be lovely to know your opinions. So, Bill Gates' name has been bandied around for ever since we started this, that he wants to control this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm quite happy if Bill Gates wants to know that I'm sat in West Bromwich studio, and I don't really care. If that's what he wants to know. What are your thoughts about those kind of things? As obviously that's as a layperson, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you people can make sense. Have you watched Game of Thrones?
No.
Slightly off a tangent. Okay. Well, I'm sure lots of viewers will have watched Game of Thrones. So essentially, obviously, I won't sort of explain it too much for the viewers, but essentially, this kind of historical fantasy drama. But the writer had used things. There are, if you watch the TV, I didn't read the books, but it looks like there was a lot of inspiration from British history. We see things from the Middle Ages and so on, with obviously some fantasy, dragons and witches and so on. So, that would be a plausible sort of history, if you like. It fits in with things that have been inspired by historical characters and figures, and it weaves in this other fantasy storyline. So, any conspiracy theory that we've seen significant events over the, it all kind of fits into the narrative of what actually happened. Or it can sort of, there's an explanation for, well, that happened because of this, not because it just happened or happened for some other reason. I'm saying that you can sort of weave a story, if you like, and it can, have some elements of, that are rooted in reality in terms of, events, and with a different explanation for it. So I don't personally believe them, but, it's like anything really, people tell them, people believe them, people spread them, and then they morph as well, so it's definitely out there, but it can also fit in with the narrative, and that makes it more kind of convincing. But I guess if I was trying to get hits, clicks, and likes on an internet conspiracy channel, then I would definitely try and weave it into recent world events in history, because that will make it more plausible. And who's benefiting from conspiracy theories? So there'll be a conspiracy theory about conspiracy theories. So I'm not convinced personally, but I can see how they get. What I'm trying to say in a very clumsy way is that I can see how they get traction. Just by reading into the narrative of actual events and going forward. But clickbait.
Yeah. As you said, we don't know the agenda that those people have, do we?
No, we don't. No.
Right. Our government and any government or any country, they're charged with looking after their citizens, and which is what they're trying to do as best they possibly can. So, and in the world that we have at this moment in time, fake news is all around us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
So people can do whatever it is that. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was saying, clickbait is, a good way of wasting time, but people make money out of all those stupid things that people might click off down the side of their, email or whatever. So, there's money in the conspiracy theories as well. They're not completely, it's not a free service to generate fear, is it? From these things. So,
that's right.
Like everything you critically appraise, you've got to just, look at everything and weigh it up and make your own mind up and see really who's really benefiting from this, because
Sure. So one of the things that I always think is the acid test is, do you follow your own advice? So have you been offered and had the first jab, or will you have it when it's your turn?
Yeah, I will be having it. I'm currently isolating at the moment because of symptoms. So I'm waiting for a test. Luckily, touch wood, my what symptoms I have are pretty mild and hopefully non-specific, but enough to qualify to be isolated and for my family to isolate and to test. Also, with the vaccination, we know, as with the flu jab, you might feel unwell for a few days. So my other half works in healthcare and we've got a couple of young kids. So we decided to sort of stagger she's got vaccinated first, so that if we both felt really unwell for a few days, that wouldn't be good in terms of looking after the kids. So yeah, I will absolutely be getting it as soon as I, assuming that my test is negative, and once I'm sort of asymptomatic, I will get it. But my other half had it first. We'll let her she was unwell for a couple of days with it, a little bit fluish, a little bit of pain in the arm, as has been described. Sure. And it all resolved as well. But if we're both in that state, it wouldn't have been, wouldn't have been very fair on the kids, because it's not like you can sort of get babysitters or nannies in easily at the moment because of lockdown. So, yeah.
Of course, totally understandable that you wouldn't both go and have it done at the same time, especially in the profession that you're in. You know that there's going to be a few days when you're not going to be 100%. And for myself, for clarity, I'm in the same camp as you. If and when I'm offered it, I will take it. My main reason for that is that I don't think we will be allowed to board a plane, either out of the countries that we're leaving or the countries that we're entering. I believe it's the Blair Institute that's trying to organize an international passport for those that have been vaccinated. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think we'll be able to travel without it, say in 2022?
That's a difficult one, and obviously something that might play into the conspiracy theorists again. But some people either won't have been offered the vaccine yet, or they may not be able to have it for whatever reason. But equally, I mean, would you really want to get on a plane right now if you weren't immune? I wouldn't. Just be sitting in a everybody's wearing masks, but I mean, masks are of varying qualities, and if you take it off to have a drink, especially if you're flying at 8-10 hours, you're probably not going to take it off at some point. So yeah, I wouldn't want to sit on a plane without being vaccinated, actually. Even though, I mean, I've done a lot of work on PPE and masks, and I could sit in a very good mask that's been fit tested and will filter 99% of pathogens, but yeah, my 3-year-old, he won't be able to keep a mask on for more than about 2 seconds. So yeah, I wouldn't want to.
Well, the air quality is pretty low on an airplane anyway, isn't it? As you say, that risk. And if you look at the countries that have been very successful, New Zealand, for instance, and Australia, they've literally banned international flights in and out of their countries right now. So the last thing we want to be doing is importing it or exporting it again once we've reached a certain point.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that, where do you think, in terms of what's government policy likely to be, or if you know what it is, at what point do they think that enough of the population has been vaccinated? Is it an age group, or is it a percentage of the population, or is herd immunity going to come in and they think it's going to be like 80-20 rule, that where when 80% of us being vaccinated, the government will think we're pretty well okay?
I think it's going to be different. I think 80-20 would be a good figure to kind of a good back of the envelope number to work on, as we work on with a lot of things in many spheres. So my gut feeling is 80-20 would do it, but again, that's just based on my gut feeling. I think though it's going to be sort of stratified in terms of an individual's risk as well. But I think once we sort of see numbers, I think when lockdown measures are released and we do not raise infection rates, then I think it's going to be something a bit more empirical, to be honest. And I think that they wouldn't. I mean, whilst you can do a lot of mathematical modelling on these kind of things, and they'll be good to sort of guide ideas as to how many vaccines we need, etc. people respond differently as well. So I think the proof will be in the pudding, and I think sort of measures would be sort of relaxed a bit, and then we'd see if there was a spike or not. But now, initially, I think between dose 1 and dose 2, it was initially 21 days, and now it's 3 months. So that's been a sort of a recent change in the vaccination schedule. So equally, we're going to see that it's going to take time for people to be properly vaccinated.
Sure.
Properly to the immunity that one gets from it.
Yeah, but we're going at great pace right now, aren't we? And the pace seems to be speeding up. Yeah, so we can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
The government.
10 million now, I think. It was 10 million, I think.
Yeah, we surpassed 10 million at the weekend, I believe.
Yeah.
So we can only congratulate the government on that, can't we?
Yes, it's been a massive effort, and there's been a lot of redeployment of people with transferable skills to do that. So whether that is people within the National Health Service or even people in the private sector, they've just then redeployed to kind of go and work and vaccinate and so on, and do other roles as well. So because we do have transferable skills, so yeah, I think there's been a massive cooperation to do that. And to be fair, it's a logistical nightmare to sort anything like that out on that scale. The logistics of that is really quite impressive.
But listen, Dr. Hassan, thank you so much for your time today. I certainly feel enlightened. So yeah, and thank you for giving up your time today and making our audience hopefully a little bit more assured as to what's going on right now. And I hope it gives them the confidence to actually make up an informed decision as to what they want to do. Thank you so much for appearing.
My pleasure. Okay, take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. So there we have it. So ਆਪਾਂ Dr. Asad ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਪਈ ਕਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ, what the risks are. There isn't anything that we do in life that doesn't carry a certain amount of risk. But this is a different kind of disease, and the likes of we've never seen before. Flu comes along, kills 15,000 people. But this thing comes along, it's already claimed the lives of more than 100,000 people, and most of us have been touched by it. I've certainly had close friends and certain members of my family that we have lost during this. So ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ mind make up ਕਰੋ that what is it that you're going to do, especially those elders in our community. ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿਆਣੇ ਆ ਹਨਾ, talk to your children, talk to your doctors, and think about what it is that you're going to do. We're very lucky, we're very fortunate that our government is ahead of the curve, and we are actually leading the world right now in vaccinations and what's going on in our population. So take advantage of that, and and be safe. That's all we can say. By the summer, we should get some kind of normality. I hope that we come back to the life that we used to know, and we can enjoy socializing, we can enjoy sports, we can be outdoors like we used to be, and we can see friends and family that we haven't seen for a long time. It will have been a year next month since the first lockdown started. So it's been a year that we've had to learn to live differently. We've had to learn to be more resilient. Mental health is an issue that's really raised its ugly head. And, we'll be covering those kind of topics in future shows. I hope you enjoyed tonight. And thank you very much for watching. And I will see you again next week. Thank you. Goodbye.